Earlier this morning, far too early to think of any potential theories as to why this plane came down.
All right, Mark. And so then what are you expecting as you're waiting there at the airport there? Are you expecting to hear from officials soon? Have you had any indication that you will hear from either any aviation officials or government officials in the coming hours?
In the next half an hour, we are expecting to hear from Jean-Marc Ayrault and the Transport Minister. We're really looking for more solid details because they are few in evidence at the moment. We're looking at exactly I think it would be far too early to know the reasons why this plane came down, but we will be able to know whether the plane has been located and exactly what, if any, discussions there were between the pilots on board and Egyptian officials before it went down. We've had mixed signals from both Egyptair and the Egyptian military this morning, although both seem to be on the same page now that the plane has indeed crashed, as was earlier confirmed by our AFP, the French press agency, and reporting from Greek sources that said that the plane had gone down.
All right, Mark, we will be checking back in with you throughout the day. This says, once again, a crisis center has been set up there at Charles de Gaulle Airport. This is where Flight 804 took off Wednesday evening at just after 11 p.m. And as we heard from Mark, indeed, details are coming in, most of them unconfirmed. I'd like to go through what we do know exactly at this stage. And for that, I'm joined in the studio by France 24's Delano D'Souza. Now, Delano, you've been covering this event for the past few hours, actually, since it broke this morning. For us, walk us through at this stage. What we do know is we have more of a better picture in terms of the passengers on board the flight.
Exactly, Molly. We do know that there were 66 people in total on board MS 804. 56 of them were passengers, 10 crew members. Now, among the crew members, we have 2 pilots as well as five cabin crew and 3 security officials. Now, let me run you through the nationalities first. We have 30 Egyptians, 15 French nationals, 2 Iraqis, 1 Brit, amongst 8 other nationalities. Now, in terms of the pilots, we had 2 pilots on board. The captain did have 6,000 flying hours under his belt. Now, to be considered a veteran pilot, you need to have around 10,000 flying hours. So, although he was not a veteran pilot, he was not an inexperienced pilot either, Molly.
Okay, then tell us a bit about Egyptair flight record, because you spoke of then the pilot just saying that he indeed wasn't a novice. What about Egyptair?
So this incident, this disappearance or potential crash, it's too early to say, comes 2 months after an Egyptian man hijacked a flight and forced it to land in Cyprus. Now, this was an attempt to see his ex-wife. Now, all passengers on board that flight were safe. Obviously, this incident has nothing to do with what we are seeing here today, because that man had psychological issues. But back in 1999, there was an incident with an Egyptair flight which crashed into the Atlantic off the coast of the U.S. island of Nantucket in Massachusetts. Now, in that incident, all 217 passengers on board were killed. U.S. investigators found that the co-pilot had switched off the autopilot and plunged the plane into the ocean. Egyptian authorities obviously deny that this happened, but also this incident comes in the back of what we saw last October, Molly, with the Metrojet crash, the Russian airliner that crashed 23 minutes after it took off from Egypt. So nothing can be ruled out at this point in time, clearly.
All right, Delano, and once again, just a reminder for our viewers who are joining us, this is our coverage of the ongoing story of the crash. It appears now that both French and Egyptian officials are indeed saying that Egyptair Flight 804 has crashed into the eastern Mediterranean. We do have an emergency contact number that has been set up by the French government. This, as the French foreign minister has just arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Now, that number you see there on your screens, it's +33 143 17 5595. This says, once again, a crisis center set up here at the airport in Paris, where Flight 804 took off Wednesday just after 11:05 p.m. with 66 people on board. Now, at this stage, as we do have Egyptian military aircraft and Navy combing the seas in the eastern Mediterranean, we are getting a closer indication as to perhaps a certain area where the plane could have gone down. For more on this, let's cross now to our correspondent correspondent in Athens. This has, of course, Greek teams, emergency teams also joining Egyptian teams there. Now, Natalie Savarikis joins us on the line. Natalie, what more can you tell us about emergency response efforts?
Well, essentially, it's all focusing around the small island of Karpathos, which is right between Crete and Rhodes in southeast Greece. At the moment, the Greek military has deployed a C-130 plane. It also has two helicopters on standby, as well as has deployed the frigate Nikiforos Fokas to go to the area and to be on standby there. Now, what I'm also hearing is I just got off the phone with the Civil Aviation Authority, speaking to an official there. I can tell you we're hearing a lot of contradicting reports, and it's all basically down to a few minutes. Now, when the Greek authorities contacted the Egyptair flight, it was around 2:55 a.m. It was flying high at 37,000 feet. There were no reports or any indication of any problem. Now, one official I was speaking to said that around 3:26 a.m. it was the last exchange and the plane was okay. But we're also hearing from another official, actually, that right before the plane left the Greek airspace, and that's about the same time, around 3:26 a.m. again, it wasn't actually responding to the Greek authorities. It went into fastly into the Egyptian airbase, or the flight information region as it's called, and around 3:29 is when it stopped appearing on the official
All right,
their counterparts.
lost our connection there with Natalie Savarikis.